Go to go. You're most welcome. This is LIBE, the learning desk. Subscribe. The first thing is to subscribe. We are just continuing doing this African social studies. We are dealing with the 9 languages, but today, in a special way, we are just looking at the impacts of the African, this slave trade to the European countries, because the Africans were made colonies, were made slaves, were made cheap laborers. Hence, they were just so the Europe. When I speak the Europeans, I don't mean to make the enmity among the Africans and the Europeans. What I want is just to make a history. That's why one singer, this is Bobu Nesta Marley, once said that if you don't know your history, you will not know your destiny. So you have to know the history. The Africans should know their history. So today we are just looking on the series of my subjects, which are in the university levels, for all people who are studying African social studies, and in a special way, who wish to know the history of the African and our African, Africanism. This is the so-called African slave trade, and so forth. How Africans contributed for the growth of the Europeans, if not of this capitalist, so to speak. So first of all, we speak of how Africa contributed to the development of capitalism in Europe. So gold and silver. Gold and silver were taken, of course, from Africa. So through African slave labor, Europe obtained gold and silver, which was the cornerstone of the capitalist money economy. They further helped to finance journeys to Asia around the Cape of Good Hope. So the African gold, African silver were taken from Africa to Europe to feed European industries. Hence, Africa contributed to the rise up of the European economic standard. So that is, African gold was also the main source for the minting of Dutch money, which helped Amsterdam to become the capital of Europe. So the English also used the Guinea gold instead of their own money. The Antarctic slave trade was the stimulator of considered advances of the naval technology. The expenses involved in building the new and better European ships were made from a fabulous profit of overseas commerce with India, America, and Africa. So that is, so the treasure treasures from Africa went to Europe to build the corner stone of the European economy. Or we can say in a short way that the Africans minerals, this gold, ivories, this diamond and silver and so forth, were the backbone for their growth or for their increase in economic areas. So Africa contributed to the rise, if not to the development of capitalism in Europe in that way, by giving the raw materials which were taken from the Africans. Second point, how Africa contributed to the development of capitalism in Europe. Due to the European slave trade, there was the rise of seaport towns, including Bristol, Liverpool, Nantes, Bordeaux, and Seville. In connection with the seaport towns, manufacturing centers emerged whose raw materials depended on the produce of slave labor. So the slave labor was cheap and priceless. Hence, the European capitalists could not pay the Africans who were working to the industries. Hence, there were the building of capitalist economic strategies. Hence, so cheap labors, there were Africans who were doing pricelessly without paying. Hence, all this made the Africans to be the contributors to the European developments. So, third point was that the African slave trade encouraged the growth of large capitalist firms, firms, including the Barclays Bank and the Lloyds Bank and the insurers. So the James Watt firm, which financed the steam engine, is another example. So Africans contributed a lot for cheap laborers. So number 5, how Africa contributed to the development of capitalism in Europe. Throughout the 7th, 18th, and the most of the 19th centuries, the exploitation of African labor continued to be the source of the accumulating capital that was invested in Western Europe. So the European capitalists depended on the priceless and the cheap laborers from the Africa. So the Africans were the ones who were working in these European capitalist industries, feeding European capitalist industries without paying payments, without what. So number 5, new industries mushroomed, including the French Saint-Malo fishing industries, the gum industry, which was extracted from Africa, and the ivory, which provided raw materials for the development of industries in Germany, France, Switzerland, and England. So, number 6, the slave trade stimulated the development of seaport towns, manufacturing the industrial enterprises. It also created many job opportunities. Many people in these areas and they were employed in these industries, thus reducing the unemployment problem. So that is, so the Africans could produce raw materials, and in Europe, the Europeans could get works in their industries sometimes, so that they could manufacture products from Europe. In Europe. Hence, due to that fact, Europeans developed because they got some employments through the backbone of Africans. That is. Number 8, the European population dominated North America. Many European countries transferred their capitalist institutions to North America. That is. Number 9, this trade stimulated the British industrial development. Africans were purchased by the British manufacturers and they transported to Central South American plantations. So the Africans went there to produce in the farms, for instance, in Caribbean there and other places like America. There we get black Americans who were some the results of these things which were done in Africa. So the profit obtained financed the Industrial Revolution in Britain. So all profits which was gained from all things which were coming from Africa was for the development of the European capitalists. Hence, Africa could be the source of laborers, the source of raw materials, and so forth. So that is why, or that's why how Europe was developed by the Africa through that way. So nobody can deny this or can refuse this. Number 11, the creation of monopolies and protective policies, trade between Europe and their colony in the New World. So the European capitalists created the many good markets in the African colonies. So the African colonies were the sources of raw materials, at the same moment the sources of market. So the raw materials could be sent in Europe, And for instance, like cotton, after the this industrial process that grow meaning growth from the industries in Europe was to feed the African colonies or African materials. So the African colonies were good markets for the products from Europe. Hence, there were the development of Africa. The development of Europe, European countries, and the underdevelopment of Africa. So number 12, the rise of racism in the capitalistic society of Europe and the USA. Due to the enslavement of Africans for more than 3 centuries, racism developed. Of course, there were no confidence we can say confidence among the Africans who could find themselves in Europe and America like the newcomers in the new world. That's why. So that is subscribe for these historian studies. For all who are studying African social studies, you may get many languages. You may get many reflections on history. So this is educational YouTube channel, LIBE TZ 9 Languages School. Subscribe and share.